coming on here to give my thoughts on Nigel McGuinness jumping ship to TNA and what the reasons why he did this, and a little update on Bryan Danielson as well, since there were rumors swirling the other day that he possibly might be signing with TNA Wrestling. That is a false rumor. That's just something that some people speculated after Nigel McGuinness getting signed to TNA and him signing a 2-year contract with TNA, which has been issued today, that he did sign a 2-year contract with TNA. And the reason why his WWE contract fell short, well, it was a verbal contract. Basically what him and Danielson had wasn't an official contract. It wasn't like a signing paper saying you're going to be with this company for, 1 to 3 years or 2 years or whatnot, like most regular contracts would be. It was just kind of something to say, like a verbal agreement. It was kind of like a verbal agreement, or a little more than that. And WWE always has to screen any wrestler that comes in, meaning, for, past medical problems, whether they get injured a lot, which probably is the reason why Nigel wasn't. Now, when I first heard that he failed the screening before another news report that just pretty much got out right before I did this video, which I didn't want to speculate it, but at first I was thinking, with Nigel's size, did he possibly fail a wellness policy test for steroids? But apparently that's not the case. He didn't fail for any drug issue or anything like that. He just failed for something, probably because his injury problems that he's suffered. And I think even though he signed, even when he got pretty much this verbal agreement from WWE, he was still battling his injuries at the end of his Ring of Honor title reign. And then a couple months after that, he was still battling injuries, so he was kind of injury prone. So I kind of understand why WWE didn't pick him up. Now, you probably would have went back to all the people that did their videos talking about Nigel McGuinness getting signed to WWE. Most people would have said, okay, out of Nigel McGuinness and Bryan Danielson getting signed to WWE, which one of those two would be the more successful out of the two? Which one would have no problem doing anything? And pretty much I would say 99.9%, if not 100% of those people said that Nigel McGuinness would be the one that would have no problems with WWE, because obviously he has the size, he has the look, he's good on the mic as well, and he has good wrestling ability as well. But obviously with WWE, that's the thing that matters the least. So most people were, obviously guessing that Nigel would have been the one that would have been successful in WWE, but he wasn't even able to pass the screening part of WWE. Which, with that, obviously with TNA, I think it's gonna be good for TNA. I mean, this is one thing that I really like, that with this, possibly, TNA gets another star. Now, the one thing that I really dislike about it, not anything about Nigel getting signed, is his in-ring name for TNA. I mean, this in-ring name, I would say that many of you know how much I dislike the name Dolph Ziggler, and I think it hurts him as a wrestler just having a name like that in WWE. This name Nigel has is probably even worse. Probably almost 10 to 20 times worse than Dolph Ziggler. I would have took a name like Dolph Ziggler over this name Nigel McGuinness got. Most people already know the name is Desmond Wolfe. He debuts on Impact this coming Thursday, I think, because they did do the Impact tapings the other day, and I think his part and everything they taped on that Impact is going to be airing on this Thursday's Impact, so he will be debuting on Impact. And even more of a surprise, he's getting a very, very big push on his debut, because they had him attack Kurt Angle backstage. And I know this is kind of a spoiler, but I'm pretty sure everyone viewing this video that knows about Nigel McGuinness debuting in TNA knows the circumstances behind it, knows the reason why his WWE contract failed and why he signed with TNA. That's not a spoiler or anything, but the whole thing with him joining TNA, attacking Kurt Angle backstage, and now they're setting up a Nigel McGuinness versus Kurt Angle match for the Turning Point pay-per-view in November. And the one thing is, that's probably a little too soon to push him to that level, considering that most people that are going to be watching Impact this Thursday, I would say, just like Truth Slayer said in his video, I would say probably like 75% of the people, just like he said, most people viewing it aren't going to know who the hell Nigel McGuinness is. I mean, there might be some people in the Impact Zone that might know who he is, and obviously some people in the internet wrestling community is going to know who he is, but for the most part, the people that are viewing Impact, most of them aren't going to know who he is. And obviously it's going to be a big way to debuting him this quick. But the one thing is, TNA is kind of messed themselves up here a little bit, because obviously you got Nigel McGuinness. I'm still referring to him as Nigel McGuinness, at least at this moment, until we actually get debuts on TV, just because I really dislike the name Desmond Wolf, and I think that name is really going to hurt him because it's one of those names that it's like, Brutus Magnus is a terrible name, Dolph Ziggler's a terrible name, and a couple other wrestling names in wrestling history are terrible. And that's like the one thing. If you got a terrible name, I don't care how talented you are and how much you can kind of have people look away from how bad your name is. The first thing they're going to notice is, look at this person's name. Can we take him seriously? And the name Desmond Wolf is really going to hurt him. But he does have, great mic work. He's great on the mic. He can play a good heel. Obviously, him attacking Kurt Angle, the way they had him attack Kurt Angle backstage, he's going to be a pretty strong heel with TNA, and I think that's the smart thing, to bring him in as a heel. And the last thing I want to see them do is put him with the British Invasion. That was the one thing I was fearing at first when I heard he was doing this thing with TNA before the TNA Impact tapings the other day, before it was revealed what his presence was going to be on that show. And I was thinking they were going to put him with the British Invasion. Thankfully, they didn't do that, and hopefully they don't do that. Even though if they had him and Doug Williams team up, I probably wouldn't mind that, considering I like Doug Williams a lot. Nigel would kind of, with his mic skills, be able to probably put that team over and actually make the team seem more of a credible tag team instead of pretty much a jobber tag team that somehow are the TNA World Tag Team Champions. And coming up on TNA's Victory Road now, this is a little spoiler here. I've kind of already talked about the spoiler with Nigel McGuinness, but this is another kind of spoiler dealing with the next pay-per-view. If you don't want to know the two or three matches that are going to be on the TNA Turning Point pay-per-view, maybe you just want to turn this video off now or skip all the way to the end or something, because I will talk about something WWE related after I get through talking about Turning Point and talking about a little Bryan Danielson update as well. And now to the TNA Turning Point pay-per-view. It's looking like it's going to be an interesting pay-per-view from TNA. Now, the main event going into it, most people were obviously expecting to see Kurt Angle versus AJ Styles, and that was originally going to be the main event for the TNA Turning Point pay-per-view, but they kind of changed their minds with it. Now they have Nigel McGuinness, a.k.a. Desmond Wolf, taking on Kurt Angle at the pay-per-view. That's the one thing. That's going to be Nigel McGuinness' debut within TNA, at least his pay-per-view debut. And do you want a guy that's coming in there attacking Kurt Angle? Do you want him to lose his debut match? That's if you're going to build him to something big. It's going to hurt him, if you have him lose to Kurt Angle, because it's going to be his first pay-per-view. And the other thing is, if Kurt Angle loses to him, it's really going to hurt Kurt Angle, because they pretty much just want to hold off the Kurt Angle and AJ Styles matches, because TNA feels that their November pay-per-view isn't going to get that many pay-per-view buy rates due to the fact that you got WWE Survivor Series that month and you got Brock Lesnar's UFC fight. So most people, if they had to choose between out of those three, which ones would they most likely get if they only can get one? Every single person is most likely to say, okay, because of WWE Survivor Series, I would get that, even though WWE Survivor Series pretty much is losing its meaning with this coming pay-per-view, this coming Sunday, bragging rights, since you're pretty much doing what you should be doing at Survivor Series a month early, and then I guess you're going to do it yet again at Survivor Series, but I'll rant about that after I get done with talking about TNA right here. And the main event for TNA Turning Point is going to be AJ Styles versus Christopher Daniels versus Samoa Joe. I really like this. This is actually, I think, one of the first times, and probably since this is how bad it is that you actually have all homegrown talent in your main event. I might be stretching this, but I really think that this might be the first time you've had your all homegrown talent in the main event for the World Heavyweight title, or this might be the first time you've ever had it on a 3-hour pay-per-view for the World Heavyweight title. Because this ain't the first main event with homegrown talent, because Unbreakable 2005 had all three of them in there as well. But this is the first time I think that there's been everyone in the main event. Daniels, Joe, and AJ are all TNA homegrown talent. Obviously, Joe got popular from Ring of Honor, but most people consider him, a TNA type guy. AJ Styles and Daniels as well. So it's very good to see TNA's, throwing out their homegrown talent. Now, the reason behind it is obviously due to they don't think they'll get enough pay-per-view buy rates for this pay-per-view, so they don't want to throw Kurt Angle and AJ Styles on this event. They want to save that for, you know, a bigger pay-per-view, possibly their December or January pay-per-view, or drag it out maybe a little longer up until maybe, I don't think they would drag it out to Lockdown, because I think if you want to have them two against each other, you're going to want to have them against each other in a regular match first, and then have the cage match. Even though they got a long feud growing in TNA since they did have the feud in 2008, they did have the match on the 3-hour special of Impact, and they've been feuding from here and there within TNA, so it would be okay if you did that, but that'd be dragging out a little too long, and I don't think they'll drag it out that long. They'll probably just wait for the December or January pay-per-view, but I think us internet fans and, you know, people that, you know, really wanted to see a match like this on TNA in a long time in the making right here, that this is going to be for the world title. Now, is it going to be as good as Unbreakable 2005? I highly doubt it. I don't think we're going to get a 5-star match. I think we'll get a very good match. I think it'll be a great match. I think it'll be, at the least, it'll be probably 4 stars, 4.5, possibly. You know, with this being the main event and all these wrestlers, all 3 of them wanting to go out there and show why they should be in the main event on a consistent basis, hell, they might be able to top themselves, but it's going to be very, very hard for them to do. And Samoa Joe, I would say now he isn't as good as what he was back then, but Daniels and Styles are always good against each other, so still would be interesting to see this. Obviously, AJ Styles is probably going to retain the title. I don't think they'll give it to Daniels or Samoa Joe on here, but definitely glad to see that as a main event. That definitely got me interested in this pay-per-view. And then they got Nigel and Desmond Wolfe, a.k.a. Nigel McGuinness. That should be interesting to see, but it's going to be one of those types of matches that you're probably going to have to end in some type of screwjob fashion, because if Nigel goes over, it's really going to hurt Kurt Angle, and if Kurt Angle goes over, it's going to be like, okay, you had this guy built up very strong, come in, attack Kurt Angle, have a match against Kurt Angle in his first pay-per-view outing, then have him lose. That's going to make him look very, very bad if you want to actually do something with him in the future. And Kurt Angle, it will really have him lose a lot of credibility if he loses to Nigel as well. So you're going to have to do something, some type of screwjob fashion or something like that. But it's going to be an interesting match. I think them two will pull off a good match. Then at first it was looking like it was going to be the Motion Machine Guns versus Beer Money, but now I think it's looking like, from some of the spoilers, because it was a little confusion there with who was going to be in the World Tag Team title match at the Turning Point pay-per-view, but now it's looking like it's going to be British Invasion versus the Motion Machine Guns. Maybe TNA will have the Guns go over, have them get what they need to have for a long time, and that's a TNA Tag Team Championship, so that's going to be interesting right there. So right there, I'm very interested in this pay-per-view. I mean, I really can't wait to see how good AJ Styles, Daniels, and Samoa Joe are going to do in the triple threat. That's going to be very good to see. Nigel McGuinness and Kurt Angle should be good in the tag team match. Maybe they'll put over the Guns. That will really help them as a tag team. Now on to a little update about Bryan Danielson. Now, yesterday there were a lot of rumors swirling that Bryan Danielson maybe has got signed to TNA, because a lot of people were speculating, okay, Nigel McGuinness' contract fell through, so maybe Danielson's contracts fell through. So that was the big rumor yesterday. But Bryan Danielson has passed all his physical tests, passed all the drug tests, and passed all the little screening that WWE has for all their talent. So Bryan Danielson is going to be with WWE. It hasn't been stated, how long his contract's going to be or anything like that. Like Nigel, we know, has signed a 2-year contract with TNA. But as far as Bryan Danielson, we're not sure about that now, but it is looking like he's going to stay with WWE. That was just a rumor yesterday. Nothing fell through with Danielson. But in the back of my mind, I was wishing that, Danielson's contract might have fell through, because I really wanted to see my dream match, probably one of the dream matches in wrestling now that I really would love to see, which was Kurt Angle and Bryan Danielson. So it's kind of being a little selfish there, kind of hoping it would happen, but hopefully Danielson is successful in WWE. Hopefully Nigel is successful in TNA, and I think I was expecting, Nigel, if he would have been able to get all his screenings and everything done with TNA, with WWE, expecting him to do big in WWE. I was expecting him to do good. Danielson, he's got connections. A lot of people backstage like him. He's close to Shawn Michaels, so with that, that's probably going to help him, but he does need a little help on his mic skills. But the one thing WWE is really losing, since you don't got a Kurt Angle or Eddie Guerrero or a Chris Benoit, you don't got any of those types of wrestlers anymore, then, you know, you need to kind of have that Mac technician, and that's what the thing that Bryan Danielson can bring to your company. So hopefully they'll do that, and WWE kind of somewhat, you know, with the way they kind of have CM Punk work sometimes, the way they got Undertaker work, they kind of like them kind of working some of that mat work and kind of like the MMA style. So Danielson, I think, can incorporate that very well within WWE. So it's going to be interesting to see how Nigel does with TNA and Danielson. I don't know how much longer we have to wait to see him get on television, but hopefully it'll be very soon. Expect when he gets on television, I don't expect him to go to Monday Night Raw or SmackDown. I expect him to go to ECW. Now on a little rant about bragging rights. Now I'm going to give my, you know, in-depth, you know, preview / predictions in a couple days after, you know, this after probably SmackDown this Friday, after I see what they do on there, and if they change anything else with the lineup or add a match or two. So I don't want to, you know, do that quite yet. But the one thing, this pay-per-view, I think, is the one. This is like one of those pay-per-views that going into it, if WWE's expecting anything of a good buy rate on here, I don't know why they're expecting it, because this pay-per-view right here, okay, you got the whole thing of, you know, you got the brands going against each other, but it doesn't make any fucking sense. Okay, you got Survivor Series in November. That's supposed to be your show that you do the Raw versus SmackDown thing, or your, you know, they're doing 7-on-7 at, bragging rights, I guess, to make it seem different than the 5-on-5 match they do at Survivor Series. And unlike Survivor Series, it's not going to be an elimination match, but still, it's the same type of thing. It's like you're doing something on this one pay-per-view a month early that you're probably going to do almost something similar to on the next pay-per-view. So it kind of hurts the bragging rights because people are already expecting to see the same thing next month, and it's hurting your Survivor Series pay-per-view because people are like, okay, this happened a month before. Why do I need to see it again? Same thing you're doing with the Divas against each other, the Raw versus SmackDown Divas. Doesn't make any sense. That should be left on the next pay-per-view. Randy Orton versus John Cena before the clusterfuck of SummerSlam this year, and I did like their match they had at Breaking Point. That was a good match. Their match at Hell in a Cell was very, very disappointing. And before their clusterfuck at SummerSlam, I was really expecting these two to pull off some excellent matches with each other, but Breaking Point was a good match. It wasn't an excellent match. SummerSlam was just terrible. The booking behind that. Hell in a Cell was a bit disappointing, and these two against each other for an hour, I do not see it being any good at all, and especially Randy Orton. I mean, Randy Orton, I've never really been a huge fan of him, but I, you know, used to say, okay, Randy Orton is a pretty good performer, but within this past year, Randy Orton has been getting very lackluster in the ring. Every single of his matches are a complete bore to watch. And seeing him for an hour, which is going to be Headlock Orton for a complete hour, is going to be completely fucking atrocious and boring to watch. And these two are really going to have to pull something out of their ass to pull off a good match. And I really think an hour match, I think the only two people that could possibly pull off a hour match, now there's two type of hour matches within WWE I think could pull off a good hour match. I think Triple H and John Cena, I think they can pull off a good hour match. They work very good with each other, have good chemistry. Shawn Michaels and John Cena are like the ones that could probably pull off, you know, not as good as Hart and Shawn from WrestleMania 12, and maybe equal to The Rock and Triple H from Judgment Day 2000. But they could pull off probably an excellent match with each other, and they'll make you want to watch it for an hour. Orton and Cena, I don't want to see it for an hour because how bad they've been working with each other this year and how much a bore Randy Orton's going to be to watch. Now, that's just a little quick rant on, you know, bragging rights. It's a pay-per-view that is going to be a complete throwaway pay-per-view. If that payper-view is any good at all, I will be really, really, really shocked. I mean, it's probably, in my opinion, because I think the Iron Man match is going to be so boring. It's going to hurt the pay-per-view so much. And nothing else on there I really care about. I mean, John Morrison, The Miz, I'm kind of interested in seeing that, but I mean, in my opinion, if you want to do these things with the brands against each other and you're kind of doing, you know, the 7-on-7 thing, the Divas versus the Divas on separate brands, why are you doing this a month ahead of time? Save this for Survivor Series. And that's basically all I wanted to come on here and say. Just wanted to come on here and give my thoughts on Nigel McGuinness signing to TNA, signed a 2-year contract. A little update on Bryan Danielson, since there was little rumors about possibly him signing to TNA. Those are just false rumors right there. TNA Turning Point, I would say, is looking like it's going to be a very interesting pay-per-view from TNA. I just wanted to rant about bragging rights pay-per-view pretty quick, and yeah, that's it. Peace. Going on here to give my thoughts on Nigel McGuinness jumping ship to TNA and what the reasons why he did this, and a little update on Bryan Danielson as well, since there were rumors swirling the other day that he possibly might be signing with TNA Wrestling. That is a false rumor. That's just something that some people speculated after Nigel McGuinness getting signed to TNA and him signing a 2-year contract with TNA, which has been issued today, that he did sign a 2-year contract with TNA. And the reason why his WWE contract fell short, well, it was a verbal contract. Basically, what him and Danielson had wasn't an official contract. It wasn't like a signing paper saying you're going to be with this company for, 1 to 3 years or 2 years or whatnot, like most regular contracts would be. It was just kind of something to say, like a verbal agreement. It was kind of like a verbal agreement, or a little more than that. And WWE always has to screen any wrestler that comes in, meaning, for, past medical problems, whether they get injured a lot, which probably is the reason why Nigel wasn't. Now, when I first heard that he failed the screening before another news report that just pretty much got out right before I did this video, which I didn't want to speculate it, but at first I was thinking, with Nigel's size, did he possibly fail a wellness policy test for steroids? But apparently that's not the case. He didn't fail for any drug issue or anything like that. He just failed for something, probably because, this in-ring name, I would say that many of you know how much I dislike the name Dolph Ziggler, and I think it hurts him as a wrestler just having a name like that in WWE. This name Nigel has is probably even worse. Probably almost 10 to 20 times worse than Dolph Ziggler. I would have took a name like Dolph Ziggler over this name Nigel McGuinness got. Most people already know the name is Desmond Wolfe. He debuts on Impact this coming Thursday, I think, because they did do the Impact tapings the other day, and I think his part and everything they taped on that Impact is going to be airing on this Thursday's Impact, so he will be debuting on Impact. And even more of a surprise, he's getting a very, very big push on his debut, because they had him attack Kurt Angle backstage. And I know this is kind of his injury problems that he's suffered, and I think even though he signed, even when he got pretty much this verbal agreement from WWE, he was still battling his injuries at the end of his Ring of Honor title reign, and then couple months after that, he was still battling injuries, so he was kind of injury prone. So I kind of understand why WWE didn't pick him up. Now, you probably would have went back to all the people that did their videos talking about Nigel McGuinness getting signed to WWE. Most people would have said, okay, out of Nigel McGuinness and Bryan Danielson getting signed to WWE, which one of those two would be the more successful out of the two? Which one would have no problem doing anything? And pretty much I would say 99.9%, if not 100% of those people said that Nigel McGuinness would be the one that would have no problems with WWE, because obviously he has the size, he has the look, he's good on the mic as well, and he has good wrestling ability as well. But obviously with WWE, that's the thing that matters the least. So most people were, obviously guessing that Nigel would have been the one that would have been successful in WWE, but he wasn't even able to pass the screening part of WWE. Which, with that, obviously with TNA, I think it's gonna be good for TNA. This is one thing that I really like, that with this, possibly, TNA gets another star. Now, the one thing that I really dislike about it, not anything about Nigel getting signed, is his in-ring name for TNA.